Just gone 11:30 in the morning on Thursday the 19th of October, and we're here on New Elvers, where many of Durham's estate agents are located. This was a situation that nobody wanted to see again. Students queuing to sign whatever house they could for whatever price was on offer, this time in 2023. And yet steps were taken to prevent this. So what happened? This online housing hub was linked in the weekly Dialogue Signposts email on the 6th of October. It assured that there was enough housing to go around and that there was no need to queue overnight like people had done in 2022.
The housing hub was basically just a collection of advice which, basically centralised advice that already existed, which you could argue is a good thing, but fundamentally it wasn't really a big change to the status quo, It was basically like, our research suggests there's enough housing, but the research wasn't really shown.
The housing hub didn't always look the same. In response to student feedback, certain phrases were changed or taken out entirely. PalTV have used web archives to see how this played out in the days leading up to the queue. By the 10th of October, outside normal office hours was added after "you do not need to queue." By the 14th, the opening phrase "don't worry" had been taken out. The following Monday, a queue began to form outside of Robinson's estate agents. We also found that the Dialogue Signposts emails after the original one on the 6th did not mention the hub, with the university instead promoting it through colleges, social media and printed materials. The Students' Union, however, chose not to promote it at all.
I think it would be fair to level the criticism at us to an extent of saying, well, you didn't advertise it, which the university I'm sure would critique us for, but bad advice is much worse than no advice. So we weren't going to promote that.
Alongside the hub, however, was the Code of Practice Agreement. This voluntary, non-legally binding code was agreed by the university and the estate agents, and committed to work sympathetically and collaboratively with students, give them enough time to sign, and eliminate the need to queue. Initially, only a few landlords had signed, however, with Morgan Douglas and Frampton and Roebuck joining by the 15th. To date, Locate Me, Harrington's, J.W. Wood and Robinson's are not on the list.
Our immediate thoughts of the Code of Practice were that a very good first step, because we have to admit that this is the first time in Durham, in very recent history, and maybe ever actually, that many people have come together to address housing, or with the aim of addressing housing, which is good. So we shouldn't disparage that, but the issue is that it was a complete unenforceable measure. There needs to be more consultation, and you can't just advice your way out of a market crisis when the situation's as bad as it is, essentially.
Students at Durham University say a code of practice designed to tackle an acute shortage of affordable housing in the city isn't working.
In Durham, 150, 160, 170 seems like a reasonable price.
Most of them around £200 a week.
We weren't prepared for this at all.
They haven't actually made it affordable.
They've screwed up completely. So now we're stuck queuing.
I mean, £200 a week is absolutely insane.
Everyone you speak to is panicking about it, and if other people are panicking, I feel like I have to panic as well, because otherwise I won't get a house.
A Palatinate article published on the 26th of October explored the rate at which rent has increased in Durham. For the academic year 2022-23, the most common price bracket of properties available on StuRents, the online accommodation search platform, was £120 to £140 per week. For 2023, the most common price bracket was £140 to £159. But for 2024, this rose to £180 to £199, with the second most common being the highest possible bracket, over £200 a week. The highest price bracket observed for 2022 was £140 plus. Jeremy Cook, the university's pro-vice chancellor, said that the situation had been exacerbated by the rise in the cost of living, and that the university had increased the Durham grant scheme by over 13% to support students from low-income families. He also said that students could look to the online housing hub for support. Mila is a second-year undergraduate. She has decided to move back home and commute into university because of the cost and quality of her rented accommodation.
I work a part-time job, so I was having to work a set amount of hours in order to be able to afford the bills every single month. I was working too many hours, and then my studying was being affected, so I decided to reduce the amount of hours I was working, but that meant when rent and bills came, I was really struggling. Whilst I didn't want to commute, it felt like the only decision that made sense for my financial situation and for my just happiness in general.
So what are you going to do next year?
Live at home.
Going to carry on living at home?
Yeah.
Did you look at signing a house this year?
No. I didn't even consider it.
Luke is a third-year undergraduate who reached out to us because the quality of his accommodation fell far below his expectations.
As soon as I walked into my room, I could see mould along the back wall. And by a twist of fate, the person who'd been in my room the year before is now my neighbour. And so he essentially warned me about what was going to happen over the course of the next year. And I should really have listened a bit more, because he said, basically, you can't open the skylight. There's no window. I've only got a skylight. Because otherwise what happens is slugs get in because it's all the detritus that's come off the trees up above you, and they'll crawl all over the bed, and he woke up to that several times. So I've had to keep the skylights shut. I opened my closet, I think it was in September, and half my clothes were just caked in mould, ranging from like a fine dusting on like the shoulder cuffs of some of the shirts, all the way up to my suit bag, which when I opened it was like mould apocalypse. I know somebody signing for £225 a week in the Viaduct next year. Well, I haven't seen the house, but you know, 225 quid a week is London prices for fundamentally a location and a property quality that just isn't London. This year, you had two cohorts of students who were forced to rush into signing a house, especially the current second years. And that is inevitably going to feed down to the first years through things like college parents and clubs and things like that. And the norm now, the only norm we've ever known, because of the fact we're only here for 2 years, the norm is that prices are ridiculous, you've got to sign early. When I say to people, yeah, we have to sign houses for next year in the first month of our university year, they all look at me like I'm some weirdo. Because they just look at me going, why did you sign that early? And I have to say to them, because we have to. It's going to get worse before it gets better. But when it gets better is probably up for debate.
It is not a quick fix, not an easy fix, but it can be fixed. So there's no reason why it should get worse before it gets better. And obviously, considering the national picture, we hope that things will get better before they get worse.
At least now, what we can say is that it's not just a Durham problem, it's just because, you know, Oxford, the queues were ridiculous, and I was speaking to people in Edinburgh where it's starting to get pretty bad. They are going down what we're experiencing now because we were one of the first to hit these issues. As to where it will go exactly, I wouldn't like to say.
And Durham, in many ways, is its own microcosm of you know, different situations, different impacts, different tensions. We know that there are things we can do to make it better, so it shouldn't need to get worse. So if it does, we then need to ask, why is it getting worse, and who's responsible for that? So, but we try to avoid that, hopefully, and just make it better.